Hi everyone, my name is Kim and I am here to tell you about Lesson 3 Explore Part 3, which is an expanded version of the water cycle game. If you haven't watched the video for Lesson 3 Explore Part 1, you should probably do that before you watch this one. I also want to say right at the top that this video is for mission advisors or teachers, not for your students. All right, so here we are at the 5 E's and we are in Explore Part 3. As I mentioned, there is a video for Part 1, which is very important to watch before this one, as well as a video for Part 2, which are the water investigations. All right, we have 4 ways to play, just like in Part 1, and we're going to focus on the whole group kinesthetic model because that is recommended, and we'll talk a little bit about the other methods later. The materials that you will need is everything from Part 1, so printables, dice, worksheets, handouts, things like that, plus contaminant cards. That is the thing that is new now are the contaminant cards. So what is a contaminant card? There are 3 kinds of contaminant cards that you will print for your students: E. coli, sediment, and salt. And the point of this is to help students understand where in the water cycle water might pick up or put down these contaminants. So they will be picking up and putting down cards to represent when water is being contaminated and when it is being purified in the water cycle. And as a reminder, you can see here on the right, the station cards, the 9 station cards. So if you want to pause this video and think about these contaminants and these 9 stations, you can do that now before moving on. All right, so a little bit about the new station cards. You will be using them. Don't use the old ones. You'll be using the new set of Part 3 station cards, which look like this. We'll talk about all those different columns in a moment. You'll also want to print, cut, and stack the contaminant cards at the station where they'll be picked up. So for instance, at River, you would need E. coli cards and salt cards to be stacked there because that's what students might need to pick up at that station. You will put 1 student at each station except ocean, and everyone else will be stationed at the ocean for reasons which we discussed in the video for Part 1. All right, a little bit about the new station cards. A couple of things to notice here. At the top, some of the stations will say if you're starting at that station to pick up a card or different cards. In this case, if you start in the river, you're going to pick up a sediment card because most water that is in rivers has some sediment in it. So you will pick that card up before you roll, and that is only at the start station where you will pick up that card. After the start, you can ignore those instructions. Another thing to notice here is that this first column after the roll says pick up. That describes what cards you'll pick up. Leave behind are the cards that you will put down, and where you are moving is the same as round 1. So for example, if you're at the river and you roll a 3, you're going to pick up an E. coli card and move to animal. So you'll have your sediment card, which you had picked up when you got to the station. You rolled a 3, you'll pick up an E. coli card, and you'll move to the animal station. This should hopefully get students to wonder, well, why am I picking up E. coli when I move into an animal? And if you are brave and want to say the word poop to your middle school students, please do that, and they will laugh hysterically. They just can't help it. However, if you are at the river and you roll a 4, now it says that you are to leave behind sediment and E. coli. If you don't end up having E. coli in your card deck at that time, that's fine. You just put down whatever cards you have that fit the bill, and then you move to clouds. So again, students should be getting this idea of like, oh my gosh, if I move from a river to a clouds, I leave behind these contaminants. Just starting to get a little interesting. So next, I'm going to model for you what you would do at the river if you rolled a 3 and moved to animal on the new version of the student handout. So this shows the new version of the student handout. This first part should look familiar from Part 1. You put the station that you would start at right here. So in this case, I start at the river. And because the station card directed me to pick up a sediment card, I will do that. And then, as I mentioned before, I'll roll a 3. So I'm going to move to the animal station and pick up a E. coli card. So at the end of the round, the cards that I have in my hand are sediment and E. coli. Now I'm at the animal station. And so I will follow whatever it says on the station card. I'll roll. Perhaps I will leave behind some contaminants. Perhaps I will pick up a new contaminant and then move to the other station. Just like as before, students will repeat this process for 10 times, and then they'll be able to kind of see where the contaminants are getting picked up and put down. Other ways to play include the small group tabletop model, small group online model, and the individual online model, which I'll talk a little bit about now. All three of these use the Google Slide game boards, either printed or online. The small group tabletop model, which is the same as part one, same as before, with the addition of the contaminant cards. And you will need those part three station cards that have the instructions on them. So they'll need the game board, a set of the station cards, as well as the contaminant cards. And then they'll just play it how they did before, keeping it on that new handout, which cards are in their hand after each roll. For the small group online model, it looks like this. So this is what you can see as the Google Slide. The game pieces are here on the left side. Students will change the name and be able to move their name around the game board just like before. But now the contaminant cards are here on the right. And so each student will claim the same color of space over here, and they'll drag the cards and pick them up and put them on here. And then when they get rid of them, put them down over here. And you may have to have them zoom out on the slide to be able to see all of this. The individual model is very similar as before, but the numbers will be over here instead of the names. And the contaminant cards will always be there on the right. Essential understandings of this game are that as water moves from place to place and changes form in the water cycle, sometimes it's purified and sometimes it's contaminated. To explore more about this lesson, go to the NSBE website for lesson 3 and find those links to the printables, the game board slides, and everything else that you need to successfully run this lesson. Have fun.